Good afternoon, class. My name is Joey Lamond, and this is my last class here at CBU. It was a great time, and the title of my final project is Wrestling versus HIIT Effects on VO2 Max After a 4-Week Protocol. So, to introduce it a little bit, this is an important subject because HIIT exercises are growing very popular across the U.S. Most people know it as CrossFit. CrossFit is a form of high-intensity interval training, and there is nationally a huge decline in wrestling. And really, the aim of this study is to create better athletes. I was a former collegiate wrestler, but I also do CrossFit, and I have always done HIIT exercises. So that's the aim for it. So the issue is there's not much in the field regarding a comparison for wrestling and high intensity interval training. Um, I would say the biggest issue though is when you do compare the two, CrossFit claims the winner of the CrossFit Games is the fittest on earth. And like I said, I'm not bashing CrossFit, but this sparked interest in me because there's huge variances in the people that compete there. And one of them being weight. A 190-pound man is going to lift more than 130, 140-pound man. And to say that he's more fit because he got eliminated because he physically couldn't lift the weight doesn't mean that that guy is more fit. He could just lift more because he's bigger. And there's no real objective data showing why he's the fittest on earth. So what's already been studied is wrestling and high-intensity interval training, VO2s, and other factors. So other physiological effects from the sports, but there's never been a comparison, or at least in my research, I couldn't find a comparison of the two. So the problem statement is the purpose of this experiment is to determine which type of exercise, 30 minutes of wrestling versus 30 minutes of HIIT exercises, HIIT increases VO2 max the most. The null hypothesis is that there is no difference in VO2 max between the training protocols. And then the alternative hypothesis is wrestling will result in a greater improvement in VO2 max than HIIT. So the methods included, for the participants, we had 48 voluntary NCAA D1 male wrestlers, ages 18 to 22, similar weight, 140 to 180 pounds during off season, and all trained in Olympic lifts. Most D1, if not all D1 programs, weight train their athletes, and they all know how to Olympic lift. So it's a good sample. They're all very similar. They all have similar demographics. And the procedures include a pre and post VO2 max, utilizing the Bruce protocol. And the HIIT group did exercises involving kettlebell swings, Olympic lifts, pull-ups, push-ups, body calisthenics. And the wrestling groups did 2-minute stand-up rounds and some mat wrestling. And the goal of the stand-up rounds are to take your opponent down and let them back up. And the goal is to give 100% max effort in both groups for the duration. And it was totaling 30 minutes of exercise every day for 4 weeks. Or excuse me, 5 days for 4 weeks. Instrumentation, we have for the VO2 max is the treadmill, gas analyzer, and a heart rate monitor. You have to be able to analyze CO2, carbon dioxide, and O2 intake. And then for future iterations, we may want to consider a lactate analyzer, electromyography, or near-infrared spectroscopy. We use those at our work at my work. I work at the experimental dive unit, and when we do VO2 maxes, we do a modified Bruce protocol, and we also we're testing other physiological factors, so it's not just pure VO2. But the more data points, the better for that we can use for future research. So, statistical analysis. Firstly, like I said, there's no difference in demographics. We had 2 independent variables, 1 dependent variable. So we used a t-test, and we're ultimately testing if there was a significant or insignificant difference in the efficacy of HIIT or wrestling in creating a greater VO2 max. So here is the how it breaks down. We have the pre and post, and of course the important value is the p-value, and it was a one-tailed. So this is the pre. They're all similar demographics, all similar experience, and 0.38. So there was no significant difference between the 2 groups. They're pretty on par. But the post, we see right here, 0.001. That's significantly different than the 0.05 value. So the findings showed that there was an increase in VO2 max in the wrestling group. The wrestling post was 63.8 plus minus 1.7 milliliters per kilogram per minute, and the HIIT group had about 3 less, a little over 3 less. So this significant difference, and future research, like I said, so we talked about the AMG, the NIRS, and lactate analysis, but we can also use different sample groups, specifically non-wrestlers or elite HIIT athletes, because we used elite wrestlers in this protocol, in this experiment. But what if we used lower level of fitness subjects or stricter diet considerations? Or it's hard to make sure we have a valid test sometimes when we're not keeping track of athletes' diets. What they eat can very much hinder their performance. So, in conclusion, wrestling won, and that's just based off the research I found, which, yes, made me happy, but that in no way made me skew the results. And like I previously said, would it be different with elite high-intensity interval trained athletes? Because wrestling is a tough sport, and more advanced wrestlers can keep the wrestling going on for longer. Whereas if you have that guy who's just dominating the match, then only one person's really going to get a workout out of it. And in order for this to be a true comparison, there has to be continued work for 30 minutes following this protocol. And the other thing I would suggest for future protocols would be to add a mid-protocol VO2 max. So it'll give us another data point, but it would also show us at the rate at which the VO2 max is increasing. And it could also help to account for possibly overtraining athletes. Anytime you mix weight or wrestling and you do it too much, that's a consideration we would have to take. So mid-protocol VO2 would provide more data, and it would also enable us to draw greater conclusions. So that's my time. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed my protocol. Thank you. Have a good day.